No, this is like the way as far as.
And then,
There you go.
Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
I will call, I don't have a gavel, I'm sorry, but I will call this meeting to order and welcome everyone. Do we have any, just so I'll know ahead of time, any public that is around?
No.
Okay. The first order of business is minutes, May 22nd Library Board meeting. Do we have any discussion on that?
Yes,
Okay,
I have a bad typo in my comments. It's like the bad typo.
Oh.
And so I think we do need to correct that, but other than that, the minutes look great.
good
Oops.
catch.
Got it.
Yeah. It's, as an editor, it's the famous one, so,
That's spell
Okay.
checkers.
yeah.
Any other comments? Any other suggestions?
I would move to approve the May 22nd board meeting minutes as corrected.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
All right,
Motion passes unanimously. On to the next budget committee meeting. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Nothing?
nope,
Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the May 22nd, 2024 Library Budget Committee meeting minutes.
Do I have a second?
a second,
Any in discussion? All those in favor?
aye,
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And if we don't have any public to attend, is there any public comments at all? Do we know?
No.
Okay, we'll move right on then. Let's see, we have to have a public hearing to receive comments regarding the fiscal budget. And if there's no public to comment, does that include our comments, board comments, or?
No, that's for the public,
Okay,
and
public.
nobody signed up to speak.
okay. Alrighty. Well, moving right along here, guys. Resolutions. We have resolution 22, adopting the 24-25 library budget. Do I have a sample or do I have a motion for that?
I so move to approve resolution 22. And that includes the budget and the tax rate.
Correct.
Alrighty. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So we'll go straight through since we don't have to move anything up for Betsy at this point. And we'll go directly into bond updates. And it looks like Miller Hall is on to show us some schematics for downtown Bend. Ruth.
Hi, honey. Thank you.
Hi, how are you? Well, we haven't seen you in a while.
I know.
And
I know.
we have new board members since you've been here,
We
so let me
do.
introduce you. We have Matthew Boris and Ruth Baleko from Miller Hall.
Yes.
Full name.
The Miller Whole Partnership.
The Miller Hall Partnership.
Yes, well, it's great to be here. It's great to have an update because I think as folks were sharing in the beginning, before we got started, some of the branches are opening, like construction projects are taking shape. You could drive by and see things out of the ground. So like it's all of the work that people have been putting in for years on paper is starting to be real. And I'm excited to hear if that buzz is palpable in your communities, aside from the fireplace. All the things we do for our carbon offsets, right? But we're here.
Indoor air quality.
Indoor air quality.
Yes.
So, but we're here to talk about downtown Bend, which is kind of, you know, such a well-loved landmark in Bend. It's been like the community's favorite, spot right in that walkable downtown. And, even though this was built in the late 90s, I think like that 25, 27 years actually represents a ton of change in libraries. It represents kind of the pre-internet to high tech to all the devices, different service models, a lot of different expectations. So the good news is we have, like, the building has amazing bones. It has some really lovely character. And even though we need to give it an update to function a little differently, for staff and for users, we want to make sure we don't lose the really great character that everyone in the community has come to love over many years. So that is the sweet spot that we are trying to operate in, of course, with, staff and user guidance. So maybe what we can talk about is kind of where we're grabbing onto things that we feel like are keepers. That's when we do a renovation. It's like, all right, what are we keeping? Because it is sacred and it's still adding value. Then, okay, what do we need to remove? Because it is, maybe it's done its thing, or it doesn't suit anymore, or it's an impediment. And only thirdly, do we start looking at what do we add back in? So that's just kind of our philosophy with renovation, same that we did here. So if we go to the next slide, you all have seen the building, I'm sure. There has a very warm quality downstairs where you come in. But I think upstairs is really where we're taking a lot of our cues from. And, it's light, it's airy. We have wonderful natural light. And I think if we go, to the next slide, yeah, maybe before I dig into kind of some of the really specific things that we're identifying, if we zoom out, when we were hired, 3 years ago, we did a kind of a sweep through all of the buildings and identified with DPL leadership and staff, okay, what are the goals for each of the sites? And each site had slightly different goals based on the facility, based on usership, operations, et cetera. And we knew this one was coming last because it couldn't start until other ones were happening and Stevens Ranch was underway. So these were some of the goals that were identified and then confirmed again in this winter when we picked pencils back up on this building. So, the big one at downtown Bend is there's a lot of square footage there that what is your operations center and now is moving to Stevens Ranch. So we're doing a big land grab there for the public. We are going to improve the functionality of kind of that area where you first come in. We've got some functional and also just kind of user experience qualities we want to work on. And then we're going to inject, like I said, some of these new spaces that are in libraries today that weren't really in libraries 20 some years ago. So like the creative making and doing spaces, the co-working. And then, like I said, we cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is a lot of love for this building and there's great qualities that we need to keep and then just enhance. And the staff, we're meeting with staff in the morning. They gave us some initial feedback, but we are meeting with them in the morning to just kind of go through. So, early things they told us was, hey, the book drop is kind of noisy. The slate floor is a little glary and feels kind of dark, little kind of technical things. So we'll continue to kind of work through those, especially as we get farther into design and we meet with staff tomorrow. And these were just some of the plans. You all know this building. So right now, the children's area that is down at the bottom of the page. The Brooks room is on the lower right of the page. Main lobby you come in is the light blue. And so just this is a kind of a map for the whole team to kind of just say, in a big picture, how are we repurposing? And these plans we actually did kind of, when we started 3 years ago, and we've actually made a few tweaks to this. We've actually, moved co-working up. We've brought more community space down. So it's working out, but anyway, it's great. All right, let's go to the next one. Yes, and this is the second floor. So creative space, and near the teams, we're thinking about how the law collection and co-working can really kind of be good buddies. And then, really keeping the nonfiction, fiction collection and the seating up there that's already working great. But maybe we talk really briefly about some of the landscape updates that we're making. Some of this is just to address spaces that, just need a refresh. Maybe they need something that can be maintained a little bit easier, but then by virtue of moving some of the program spaces around, we're introducing some new exiting. And so that needs to be brought up to ADA compliance. And so Matt, maybe you want to address that because we just talked about that yesterday, but our landscape architects.
Yeah, I think if we look at the south end of the building, right now there's that kind of fenced in enclosed plaza that isn't really utilized. And so what we're doing here is rethinking that, kind of removing that fencing, updating and refreshing the landscape so that it's more of a kind of visual amenity to the kids area, the big bay window there in the kids area that they can look out onto. And then rethinking just kind of the egress path, because right now the egress path from that south stairway just kind of spills into the plaza but doesn't necessarily connect to the sidewalk, and it really needs to. On the north side, you'll see that in the floor plan, we're moving the community room, the current Brooks room, to the north bay window. So wanting to be able to have that function after hours, we're going to be adding a new exterior door on that north bay window. And that'll be accessible from the 2 accessible parking stalls on the site. And we're going to increase the width of that current ramp there. It's an ADA ramp that gets you up to that door. Refresh that plaza area and then provides some steps down to the sidewalk on the north side. And really, we've studied a couple of iterations, but we were really cognizant about not trying to confuse people with this new entrance during daytime hours. We don't want it to appear as the main entrance and people knocking on that door, which will be locked when the front door.
I want to get that phone call.
And so we're maintaining all the trees, although we are gonna engage with an arborist to determine the health of those trees, if they need to be trimmed, but then enhancing kind of the understory kind of plantings and refreshing them. We are electing to remove all the trees along the east side of the building. Right now, they're kind of awkwardly placed in front of windows. And so we're gonna take those out. They're also a weird proportion and scale. We're gonna remove those and locate them on the solid walls so that you'll always have kind of clear visual out through those windows that will be both part of the staff area and the kids' story time and creative room. And we're refreshing all of the snow melt system in the sidewalks. So at the service loading dock, we'll have snow melt, that ADA ramp up to the new north door, and then from the front entry out to the curb, and then also connecting to the 2 ADA stalls that are located here, as well as to the book drop.
Yeah, so I want to start with the second floor, because this is really where we're taking inspiration. Because I think the character up here, at least from what we've heard so far from folks, like there are items here that give this library the quality that everyone really enjoys. So we kind of, everyone knows this building so well, you've all lived in it, but it helps to kind of just sit with a photo for a second and actually identify the inventory of things that make this a success. And then as architects, we then look for ways to transfer, not always literally, but transfer some of what we're seeing here downstairs. Because right now downstairs feels really different. And there's a lot of reasons for that, which we'll get into. So we started here. We said, okay, first of all, really warm wood ceiling. And it's not made of big, huge panels. It's made of individual, like tongue and groove, members that are more like a human size, not big sheets. So you see that texture. It's, you see the exposed structure, you see the beams and the columns and the fasteners that are attaching those. It's almost like construction you might see in a large home, it's not unlike that. And then, because of the clear story window, you're getting this indirect light all the way down the building, and it makes the light quality more even up here. And that makes a difference because the light at the very end doesn't feel as glary because you've got even distribution of light, throughout the day. And then you're seeing a really neutral supporting walls, and they're all just very clean, kind of neutral off-white rectangular shapes. And in some instances, they've been broken up by some wood trim to kind of bring down the scale or the height. That's what some of that wood casework on the left is doing. And your end panels of your shelving, your other displays, the desk element, they're all contributing to that warm wood feeling. The flooring is kind of in a warm mid-tone. And then the other thing we noticed is that soffit along the right, they're bouncing some light off of that. And that's a technique we're actually gonna introduce more of up here. And we're because it's also a really great lighting strategy. So we're gonna kind of improve and introduce more of that up here. So there's just some really great tips. Lighting, we're gonna be able to keep, we think, the same light fixture locations. We're gonna change the actual fixture look out because we do want to get a little more performance out of it. You can see right here at this desk, you can see where DPL had to come in and say, we need a little bit more light at this desk. Let's put a bunch of spotlights here. So we know we need more oomph. But we think we're gonna be able to do that without introducing a lot more visual clutter and conduit and J boxes up there, because that would really also take away from how nice the ceiling looks. So those are the kinds of things we identified up here, just if you squint. And so I kind of walked through our approach to the second floor. I know this image looks like we're putting in wood flooring. We're not. It's just the way that kind of that material is reflecting. But if you squint, we still have a long way to go to organize the collection with DPL and the staff. But if you squint, the bones of the upstairs is going to feel very similar. There will be pieces of the wall on the left that are going to be removed because we're introducing the new teen space, the new maker space. And so there will be some configuration change along there, more openings. You'll see more into spaces on the left because that's where staff is right now. So you have a bunch of solid wall enclosing that. So you're actually going to feel like you have more space up here because of that land grab that we're getting on the left side. And so we're going to try to, even if casework gets reorganized and rethought with the Wayfinder system, we're still going to be looking to bring in that warm wood. We're going to be thinking about how we're enhancing that same light quality. So all the good bones are going to stay up here. But this is a really great roadmap for tools we can take downstairs. And this is just a quick floor plan layout before we go down. Again, the south is to the left on the screen, north is to the right. So that that area along the east where people sit all along those window seats behind the stacks, that's a keeper. We're gonna get new seating and refresh with new furniture, but that is just a really loved spot by all those windows. Then we're gonna still have a lot of collection shelving in that area. But then the middle of the building is really the opportunity where we have some, we have the ability to rethink how it's organized, how it feels. What's your first impression when you come upstairs? Because that big service desk, it will be gone. We get that space back. And the computers that are kind of right on top of you are getting moved. They're gonna be where it says co-working and law. So we can create a new first impression. I think that's really exciting. So how we do that, we have not yet really started exploring that with DPL. But then the kind of new spaces you're getting On the far upper right corner, teens will actually get their own, like, an area that's identifiable. Right now, you know how they're gonna just down at the end with some posters? This is actually will feel like a space. There will be a study room adjacent, and then there's also will be another meeting room up here. You know, kind of in the 12-person size, you know, category, so kind of mid-sized meeting room. That can be for homework, that can be for any number of things. And then introducing another restroom there. And then over to the left, the co-working area, the law collection, that legal kind of cut, so those functions seem to partner really well. And right now they're just kind of out in the middle of the second floor. And so that's gonna get a designated home. So that's why we're saying that middle of the building, a lot of the things are moving to other spots. And now that's gonna be, I think, a great opportunity to create a, you know, new experience, but within good bones.
We're
Oh, yeah,
electing
two little study rooms are, yes.
There's a current larger
Mhm.
meeting room, but because of that law library and some of the functions that are associated with that, there's the need for maybe smaller meeting rooms
Yeah.
for
Mhm.
kind of.
Consultation.
Yeah, we're in the
Mhm.
library this time.
lawyers.
Yeah. There's a little like staff touchdown spot on the lower left. By the way, we will be redoing the public restrooms. We need to add some fixtures. We need to just make it a little bit more conducive to you know, better supervision and things like that. So that's gonna get a refresh. We're working through what we can do kind of in the stair area. So some of that we haven't even really gotten to yet.
Yeah.
But the basic organization is kind of, I think, starting to stick.
And this is really just for that universal family bathroom that we currently don't have upstairs.
Yeah. Just a quick, you know, we also look at things in 3 dimensions, so we can kind of tell like, hey, how do we keep views through the building maintained? Where do we need a little bit more spatial definition? And so this kind of gives you almost like a topographical landscape. 100% this will change by the time, you know, we get through design, but these are some of the, just to show light on some of the tools we use.
So, excuse me, what's the capacity on those smaller meeting rooms?
Oh, more like 4, 2
4.
to 4. Mhm.
Yeah, that's one question I've had posed to me is, will downtown have more meeting space that can be reserved by groups? Cause I know right now
For
it's
sure.
the Brooks and the.
Yes,
So
yeah,
that's-
absolutely.
That's a real
Way more.
priority, I think.
Yep,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, it's really pleasing to see an increase in all sizes. of
Yeah,
types of
yeah,
meeting rooms,
yeah,
too. So
yes.
that's exciting.
Mhm.
Good.
Yes. All right, so let's go down to level 1. And we were talking yesterday with DPL, like, this is a little bit tougher of a nut. We're convinced we are gonna get there, but just to kind of talk through where we are. This is showing the reorganization of space. So before we decide what the character looks and feels like, this is kind of the organization that makes sense. So I'll kind of take you through. You come in the front doors and there still will be staff space there. So the book return, the handling of materials, you know, staff workspace, supervisor offices, that's still gonna be there, but it's a, you know, I wanna say less than half of what currently is on this floor because of it being an operations center. So we really consolidated that. It's much more in keeping with all the other branch locations. But now, because we have, relocated a lot of the operations services, the area where you see the word community, is a big land grab, because that's all staff space now. So that will be a new large community room. Open, you know, enter it during the day through the library. It can, you know, it's acoustically contained, but then after hours, you see there's a door on the right. So it has access to its own bathroom, its own little kitchenette. And so you can come in and use that after hours. And so and the capacity, I want to say, compared to the current Brooks room is.
I don't know the capacity, but it is a larger room than.
Larger
what you
space.
Currently have.
Yeah, so that, and then the wall between that room and the rest of the library will be glass. So now all of a sudden, when you come into the lobby, we are removing that casework, like the holds casework and the children's display casework. So you're gonna be able to see down to the bay window and see down to the bay window. So even just that is gonna feel more like upstairs, because you won't feel like the first floor is so kind of compartmentalized into these, you know, closed off chunks. We still need to work through with DPL how we display hot and new in the library, how we provide, you know, if holds lands here. So you're seeing a big area of empty real estate. That will not be empty. We just haven't gotten to that piece yet. New refreshed and expanded bathrooms, elevator, stair. The area on the upper right really has to stay kind of the way it is because it's all the infrastructure. New HVAC equipment, boiler, electrical room, telecom, loading. So that really is kind of off limits in terms of, you know, any kind of introduction of public space because it's the workhorse of the building. But now when we go to the left from the lobby, we're really going to see some change. It's still the children's area, but we're able to open up the area where it says young readers and early learning. You know, some of that's open, some of it's children's staff right now. So we're getting a bunch of new space there and really able to zone the children's area for the different ages. So our youngest little readers up on the top, kind of upper left of the screen, we will develop early learning components and environments for downtown Bend, like we've been doing. And then kind of our older juvenile readers in the middle. And again, that nice bay window with some seating for readers and caregivers. But then the new big win, kind of where the Brooks room and that other kind of like little alcove of shelving, you're gonna see some big change. So an enclosed programming storytime area, far larger. And also a creative kind of maker space, sort of space. And they can open up to each other or host simultaneous different functions. We have a family restroom in there. And so all of that will be also very visible from the children's area. And you'll enter it from the children's space. That little meeting room that's kind of, it used to be like the Friends of the Library store. That will be another little meeting room. So if like, you know, social work is coming in to have an appointment, someone who wants to just come in and not traipse through the library, we'll keep that there. And so you're really gonna feel a lot more space down here on level 1.
And I think it reads as a solid wall, but if you zoom in, it's all
glass.
glass. With the exception of this little thing. So again, having a lot more access to the windows that are on the east side, but as you come into the lobby, before you had a staff kind of enclosed room, but
Yeah.
those 3 windows on the west side will also be more visible. So you'll have
Yeah.
much more even light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kids will see story time that's going on.
Yes.
Even if they didn't
Yeah.
realize what's happening.
Absolutely. So it's gonna feel really different just with the opening up and redistribution of space. But when we get to kind of like, okay, what does it wanna feel like? There's a lot of equipment in the ceiling, ductwork, sprinklers, lights, and they're, you know, the structure's at a certain height. So there's only so much we can do to grab more height. But we do feel like it wants to feel taller. So what we've been doing is digging into existing heights of ductwork and equipment, what can move, what can't. And then really starting to think about how we treat materials and how we treat light. And you know, what you're seeing here are big wood soffits that are under some of the ductwork. And so you're seeing areas where they kind of coffer up and make an elevated area where they can, but then come down in these wood areas. And while we like the really warm wood, there is a certain element of the way it was executed that contributes to things feeling a little more compressed. And I think some of the really deep saturated color also contributes to that. If you think about the things that we identified upstairs, so coming down and now diagnosing down here. The other thing, you know, you're seeing is, we don't have that kind of even distribution of light that we have upstairs. We have kind of these very narrow portals where light comes right at you and it's not balanced by other light. And that's kind of a lighting technical 101 thing. And then And then, we don't have the same wood structure as upstairs, but we do have columns, so we're gonna figure out like, do they still wanna be green? Do they wanna be, what is the character? Cause they are present, they're one of our tools, right? And then the slate floor, we've heard just, it was really in at a certain time, but we know it contributes to some acoustics, some glare issues, so we're working through how to change that. Okay. So,
By the way, you're being nice. The slate floor has been awful for the staff from day one. Because you roll a cart across it and it sounds like
Yeah.
a tank is moving.
yeah, yeah.
Imagine.
You never know what anyone loves. I try to be, respectful, but okay, we're just gonna rip the Band-Aid off for here for a second. So when we do visualizations in the computer, they're only so good, especially this early in design. So they can look a little blunt. So just know this is a very, very early depiction of some explorations we were doing. It does not yet have the exact way we might detail things. It doesn't have the color of furniture and finishes. It doesn't have a lot of that, but it's a tool, right? And so what we looked at a bunch of options with DPL yesterday for how we treat the ceiling and these unforgiving ductwork and ceiling heights. And we started thinking about, is there a way to bring the warm wood feel from upstairs down, but in a way that makes it actually feel like it's been lifted rather than lowered?
Right.
And so this was a scheme where you can kind of see that we've got the warm wood in pieces that look like the size of the pieces of upstairs. So you're not seeing like big 4x8 sheets of like wood. It's that scale, right? That home residential scale. We have to integrate lighting, etc. But if you start to break up that wood where we have some of the steel beams, so you kind of break it up into chunks, it starts to soften the scale. And then we can actually use the lower area where the ductwork might be to create a similar light cove to upstairs. And what that does is it gives us that even distribution of light before we get to the bay window. And if what also is a technique to make a ceiling feel taller is to get light on it. We've actually renovated libraries before that had kind of older brick, dark character. And when patrons have come in, they said, "Oh, did you raise the ceiling?" And we said, "No, we just I wish, we just got light up on it." And it actually feels like you bought some more height. So we're gonna play some tricks like that in a really technical way.
Hey Ruth, I'm
Yes?
sorry to interrupt you, but is everyone oriented properly? Do you know which direction we're looking and where you're standing?
Good point. We're in the lobby looking toward children's. And what we have cropped off the screen for now is the kind of the stair elevator area, which we're, still beginning. But what you can see here is, oh my gosh, I'm seeing down to the bay window because the children's shelves are lower. I'm looking into that new land grab where kind of like children's staff is. And because the paint and the finishes are a little lighter, it also feels like it's more expansive rather than what do we call it? Not receding, but coming toward you. And then you just barely get a hint of the windows that are giving views into story time and creative. All of that is going to feel a lot bigger too, because you're seeing into all of that side of the building. We don't know yet how we'll integrate. There's a lot of that really lovely wood panel downstairs. In the way it was detailed, it does feel a little residential and maybe dated. Not as a criticism, just that was a style. So I think we all want to bring more of that wood down into kind of the wall environment. And we're going to just start exploring ways we can do that. That, feels like it's in areas where patrons will notice it, it'll be part of the experience. It doesn't just feel like it's been applied, with a paintbrush. So I think we're excited to explore ways to do that with the library. And then this is just a sample view of okay, that same ceiling idea, how would it work as you look now through the area that is Holds and the former staff area, you see all the way through into that community room and out that bay window. And so you're kind of getting a sense of wow, we're getting a lot more space back. And so we're really in the infancy of this exploration, but we wanted to kind of show you the ways we systematically look at the upstairs, grab things that are good, and then we start like just frankly trial and error downstairs. How do we get to this character? And then this is just a view as if your back is actually to the bay window in kids, and you can see into like story time and those spaces. So these are just some of those like very early. And here's the community room. Big screen is down. There's some really big ducts in there that go like are in the ceiling. So we have to kind of get creative about how we might like actually coffer those wood panels in a couple of chunks, but we think there's some real possibility here. So we're in the very, very, very beginning, know that these are rough, but we're gonna give you a sample of just kind of things that we're testing with DPL. And that's, I think, all we had.
I have a question on the schematic for the first floor. There was a room labeled bike room.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
yes, it's this room right now that it's a very weird area with a lot of equipment, like the irrigation controllers are in there, the access to like the elevator machine rooms, there's a
It's like janitorial shelf.
janitorials. But it is where staff have stored bikes because it was the only place. So it's really not, if we're calling it a bike room, but it's really also like miscellaneous weird equipment room. Which doesn't fit in the space, but that's kind of what it is.
Well, we'd like to clean it for the bikes so it doesn't stay the miscellaneous.
Yeah.
room.
Yeah.
And then we have a place for staff to be able to continue to have like stored out.
Yeah.
And currently, in the current plan, there is a corridor that connected the loading staff room to that bike room. But
With the restroom.
we've actually taken that janitor's closet, like corridor away. We put in a janitor's closet in that loading staff. So the only way you can access the bike room now is from these double doors. And what that allows us to do is expand, because that men's restroom only had one toilet stall. So by extending all the way to the west, we were able to get a urinal plus.
Yeah, we were under fixtured.
So we are expanding the men's restroom, that it'll be the same layout as level 2.
And then the wall on the creative room, that will also be glass so that.
Yep, and operable, so they can have one mega event or two separate events or, smaller, so that'll be an operable partition.
Yeah, so this wall will be glass, but this one will be solid
Yeah, the one in between.
in between, so that you can hold the story time and have a creative function simultaneously.
Yeah.
I'm confused about that wall. Is it a movable wall or? It is a movable. So can this Storytime creative space actually serve? Because I think the staff was looking for bigger community rooms for downtown. Could that serve potentially as another bigger community room?
I think that's
Yeah.
really an operations,
Yeah.
operations decision. Mhm.
Funny, I think right now, the intent for us as we've been talking design is that story times are very popular. And so the opportunity to be able to move that wall and expand into a larger space creates a lot of opportunities for the very popular times of these story times.
And right now, the story time is in the Brooks room, right?
Right.
Yes.
And so I think that what you're seeing here, just to overstate it, is now Storytime has its own home base and a Brooks room equivalent. So that we have kind of almost doubled, if not more, the ability to have simultaneous programming.
Yeah, and go ahead.
I was gonna say, I would imagine story time is mostly happening during the day,
Right.
but the option to have a second community room for evening programs would be available if that's the decision.
Yeah.
When
It's
the
like-
library's open.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like that
that's the
operation.
key.
Caveat, because what you remember of the existing building is if you came through this vestibule, there was a door that allowed you to access
Mhm.
the Brooks room. We're closing that off because when
It's not
we
really
make
safe.
this occupancy, an assembly occupancy, you need two means of egress, and that's currently one of your problems with the Brooks rooms, is there isn't two ways of egressing out to the exterior, making it problematic, which is part of the reason why we moved it to the north and added this new door. So you'll have one exit here, and then you can go through stair number 3 for your second means of egress. But
And
this
really,
will only be allowed.
the big change in this program, or in this design, is that it gives us the ability to now do simultaneous family programming and, you know,
Adult
programming
yeah.
throughout the day, whether that's story time programming or evening time family stuff. So yeah, during operating hours, it gives us that flexibility
Yeah.
to run.
Which is.
Yeah,
good
it's
point.
huge.
We've been competing with ourselves for years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
through our
Right.
own programs.
yep,
And I'm just wondering, like, at the back of this community room, and I mean, I know the intent is to have a close-offable room for after hours. But for large events, I mean, to have the flexibility that we have in the central library, to be able to open that up to the rest of the lobby would be fantastic.
yeah.
I mean,
And even when like nothing is going on, can I mean, you don't want a big space like that sitting dark and empty, right? And so
Right.
like, man, we just want to be, not that it ever will, because programs will be happening all day, but you want people to actually be able to go in and use it on the off chance that it's empty.
right, right. And I mean, so the more flexibility we can build in so that we can, I mean, I'm thinking the gala, you know, have it spill out into the entire lobby and have staff available after hours so that people aren't wandering around the building.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think that really adds value. And then, can I ask more questions?
Absolutely. I'm here, Ann.
Upstairs. So like Ann said, I think one of the big things that we've heard from the public is that the need for, there's definitely a need for small meeting rooms, for sure. But there's also a need for medium-sized meeting rooms, and with this design, we're actually taking out the Hutchinson room and the Meyer classroom, and there's not, I mean, there's the one medium-sized meeting room, but if there was any way that we could get some other medium-sized space.
And for reference, square
Yeah.
footage wise, that meeting room is about the size of the
Oh, is it? Okay,
of the
okay.
Myers.
Okay, good, yeah, because I mean, there's just there's a lot of needs for a lot of different sizes of groups. And then the other question, and this is the danger of having me roam around the world and look at libraries
great.
obsessively.
We love it, Ann.
And so I know in a lot of areas, some of the, like I have seen, like co-working type spaces that were glassed off so that it looked like a large meeting room. But people could also just cruise in there and do their co-working space. And I don't know whether you've given much thought to that as far as like closing. I mean, I don't want to cut this space up.
Yeah,
Definitely. And you
yeah.
guys are the architects.
No,
so-
it's great.
But, you know, to glass that off so people could go in there for a quiet work area
Yeah.
and or have a class in there or a meeting.
Right.
You know, maybe, I mean, I don't know. And then with the teen space, same deal. Do we want that
Glass.
glassed? I always, you know, sort of the gold standard in teen spaces is the one that we saw in Fort Vancouver, which you guys did. And that's the coolest teen space I've ever seen.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know there are issues from a supervision standpoint and all of that, but to have that feel like
Yeah.
their space.
Oh, yes.
So I mean,
Really-
it's just an
And
idea,
that is, that's one we debate a lot internally.
right?
Is, because we do not glass in other areas.
Yeah.
And because there's what we found in studies, teens like to be by themselves, but they also like to have people there.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you shut them off, that might scare them off more.
Yeah,
And being open so that we can kind of see what's going on.
Yeah.
So we're,
Yeah.
yeah, you
Yeah.
guys, I mean, these are
Yeah.
just like
No, it's great.
reactions.
Well, and like Tyler's saying, absolutely the kinds of things that get talked about.
oh, yeah.
And I think what's cool about this teen area is that it's going to feel like a very distinct space because it has a much lower ceiling. You know, like the areas that run parallel to the big hall,
Right.
they have a much lower ceiling. So it's gonna feel like its own room,
Yeah.
very much,
Mhm.
even without glass, because it has its own, you know, kind of ceiling.
Yeah, well, I love all the lighting, the look and feel things that you're thinking about. It's like, I was involved with this building when it was built. And I also went into the Beaverton Library,
Oh,
which
yeah.
was built
Yeah.
just about the same time by Hacker. And I went in and went,
Wait,
oh,
it's
this
the
is the
same
Hacker
thing.
Library.
I know.
I mean,
Yeah.
with the same issues that we have.
Yeah, well, yeah, do you have any pearls of wisdom? Because, you know, the contractor that is going to do the reno was also part of the original
Right,
construction.
right.
So he's had great tips like, well, you know, when we did that column, here's why it's round, you know, and so, yeah, it's helpful.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't involved at that level of detail, but yeah, I mean, I see big opportunities for this building. And honestly, this has been one of the parts of this project that I've been very most excited about. To be able to reclaim a lot of the space in this building, because it is such an integral part of downtown and people really love it and use it.
Yeah.
And I want to augment that.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it'd be great, you know, over time to keep thinking about what things are those sacred, please don't change. And then areas that you think people would be amenable to revising. You know, you don't wanna touch something that's precious to people, because that can create some ill will. But you probably all, you know, as you think about it and sit with it, you know, share with Todd and the staff, like, if anything comes to you that like you were really hoping, you know, while we're at it, could you fix this?
Well, the whole coffee situation is always, that's been the one that people have talked about since the building was built. Because it's,
Yeah.
The fact
That
that we
was-
don't have coffee?
yeah.
That was one of my questions is we don't have a coffee shop in here.
Well, we're gonna support
I
local
think you're
business.
feeling our pain, which is that, with a renovated building as opposed to a new building, we are limited to the four walls that exist.
Right,
And so like, there's a lot of things we would love to put in this building. And it really comes down to what do we want to
how do we want to use
squeeze
this
in or
space?
squeeze out? to make it
Yeah,
fit.
and to me, I'd rather, I mean, I think meeting room space is probably at the top of my list.
Yeah.
It'd be great to have all of the above, but we can't do it all.
Can we go
But this
down
is-
to the first floor again on
Sure.
that? If it's potential to be able to utilize that Storytime creative space as another community room, is there any way to, again, just like the community room you have designed here, have an outside ingress such that it can be used for after hours?
I think there I kind of look at how often we have requests for meetings like that, and I don't think we get, well, don't forget, we have the central library where you have the ability to do that. And then, and so I think we're probably in very good shape there. I mean, that would obviously allow the most flexibility, but the actual amount of times people want to do that would probably be pretty low for the cost.
Okay.
The other thing the board may not be aware of is that stair number 2 on that south end was not accessible when it was designed and built. So there is a step that one has to go
Okay,
up
so it's not good.
in order to get out.
Yeah.
So making that an after hours egress presents some problems for accessibility that we would have a lot of work ahead of us in order to overcome.
And another question is, I know that building has a basement, it's flooded before.
No.
What's with the basement?
think.
Yeah.
No,
The old original library.
so no basement.
Oh, no basement. That's in the administrative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, got it. And this building does not have the conveyor belt book return.
It will have a sorter. It lives kind of under the words book return, but it will have a sorter.
Okay,
Similar to the other locations. Mhm.
okay, good, good. Okay, thanks. Anything else for Ruth and Robert?
Matt.
Hey, Matt.
Hi, Robert.
Or Matt? Sorry.
No, I think, if not, we're looking for, since we are just through the schematic design, we really just want to make sure that we are on track with the board's wishes. And that's why we're asking for a motion to approve basically the general schematic design. And for that, at this point, we're really talking about where the walls and the doors are placed. It's not so much, it's not at all what the furniture looks like or where the shelves are. Kind of give you a sense of where we are with schematic design.
Okay. If there's no more discussion, do we have a motion on the downtown Bend schematic design?
Yeah, I move to approve the overall schematic design, site plans, and major components outlined in the architect's presentation on the downtown Bend facility remodel.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All righty, motion carries unanimously. And thank you so much, Ruth and
Thank you,
Matthew.
Bunny. Yeah. It's great to see all of you in person. It's been a while, and Bunny, seeing you virtually.
Yes, yes, good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Also,
Just be on your-
I'm assuming that this building will be a little more, will try to be congruent with the other buildings too, so that all our libraries have that same feel, that Miller Hall feel.
Yes, yeah, and consistency for the users, so that they find similar interfaces for things, so, yeah.
For the feel, are you suggesting an electric fireplace?
No, not at all.
Oh, thank you.
Great.
Thank you. And so now we're down to Greg.
Yeah, great.
Absolutely. Good to see you guys. Yeah. So I think just kind of summarizing the monthly report from a schedule standpoint. There's been no significant changes yet. We talked about that we're evaluating the central library schedule, and we'll be updating that here this coming month and talk more about that in July.
Hey, Greg, I'm gonna invite you to go up to the table there.
Yeah, so that
We've
will.
got,
Right. Absolutely. So other schedule things, like you heard, Sun River is nearing its completion of construction and getting ready. We're gonna be starting our FF&E as early as Friday. There's pieces starting to arrive and shelving comes in this next week. So that's tracking right along where we expect it to. And same with Redmond. Both of those are tracking well. So major items there. Stevens Ranch Central rapidly going. If you've driven by, you start to see the walls going up. Formwork is up in the air, and so they're making good progress as we go through it. So not too much more on schedule. On budget, there was no budget revisions or changes. There's no change to the overall contingencies, so those maintained static. Probably the one thing that dovetails in with Matt and Ruth's presentation about downtown Bend is that we did a budget cost estimate with Kirby on that. And so the design that you saw fits within our budget. And it includes a number of things that outside of all of the repositioning of the building is, of course, we're redoing all of the mechanical system, all of the electrical and the lighting, and bringing them all up to current higher efficiency, doing everything we can to make the building as energy efficient and operable as we go through. So, and we spend a large amount of money on that, and it's really to position the building for that long-term life in front of us. And so Ruth and Matt's team are really addressing every aspect of the building, short of structurally revising it. So, but budget-wise, again, no real changes there to talk about. The reports are in there, updated, contingency and that. Only real changes, of course, are to expenditures as we go through. And so our cash flow is tracking generally to what we expect, and we'll be updating that again this month here in June to work with Robert. So I am doing an overall analysis of the budget right now, just looking at how that's coming along, not expecting any significant changes as Sun River and Redmond are nearing the completion of construction. I start to really look at, well, where are those contingencies? How are those wrapping up, and how do those budgets look, and the GMPs on both of those? And no surprises out there. I think they're both of the GMPs on those two projects with Sunwest and with Kirby are still very sound, looking really healthy, to where we'll be able to wrap up all of our construction costs within those budgets. FF&E items are, really advancing and moving forward. Nothing, again, surprising or shocking. We have small changes that we've been doing, and, some of them I have one amendment tonight to go through with you, where we're making adjustments and fine tuning some of those pieces in order. And, last month we talked about shelving one. And so those are really just kind of tweaking it a little bit. Procurement side, Kirby is actively going on next amendment to finalize the GMP for Central. Bidding is actively going right now with all the subcontractors. There's good interest out there, which is good to see. And, a lot of subcontractors are looking at the project. It's a big project. So for some, it's beyond their capacities, but it's also attracting other bigger firms from around the state. And which sometimes brings in some real good, high quality subs that exist over in the valley that we may not necessarily have. And millwork is one of those big packages that is really getting some interest there. And so that's just good to see that there's good bidding activity, because that helps keep our costs in line, keeps the pencil sharp, right? And which is always to our benefit in the end. So working through those types of issues, nothing really with insurance or entitlements. On the central design, probably one of the big things that was beneficial is our phase 2 building permit. We were expecting to see the plan check comments come back from the city about this week, and we got them like 2 weeks ago, right at the beginning of June. And so Matt and his team have jumped on those to get those responded to, getting back into the city yet this month, which will be real positive, because that permit we're anticipating having by end of July, which helps us to go vertical with the wood framing in construction. So the concrete work will take us through July and into August, but we won't have that permit ready to go directly moving on into construction. And so one of the, it's not really designed, but in the construction side of it is that our ALDT panels are in fabrication. They've already completed the second floor, third floor, and they're working on the roof. So they're well along in production and fabrication. Kirby sent guys up to Canada where they're being made to physically inspect them, look at them, see them. All of the glue lamp beams and columns, Friday, they are being released to go into fabrication. They've been doing all of the design and prep work through the shop drawings and submittal process to get us to that point. And all the structural steel is in fabrication and shop drawing process right now. So, which leads us to, in August, we started going vertical with the rest of the building. And, all three of those components come together all at once. And, you'll see that going on, and that fills up the rest of the year, is getting that structure up, ready to then start cladding it and putting on the walls. So, very exciting. We started building some mock-ups out there, and, so that piece is all really advancing along on that. The other design construction outside of what you heard here on downtown Bend is, really wrapping up FF&E procurement and advancing through that. So those are progressing. There's nothing other than the team's working on them, and they're kind of churning away. No new issues or surprises there, and will continue throughout this year. From a finance standpoint, draws are being processed, bills are being paid, not having any issues with any of that, which is always a nice thing, and kind of gets us to the end of the report. Photos are in there, but questions?
I was not able to get the first photo link for the Redmond Library to open.
Right, yeah.
The second one worked, but not the first one.
And as far as cladding central, how is that working with weather? I mean, like, when do we expect to get that building closed up?
So it literally will be next summer before it's fully enclosed.
Okay,
And they'll build through the winter. So one of the things, with all of the wood construction, and especially all of the ALPT, Kirby has developed it. It's a waterproofing plan, and it's developed in conjunction with the design team. How do we protect those panels?
right.
And so when they build those wood panels in the plant, they literally are putting a waterproof membrane right on top of them.
Oh, wow.
And then they get wrapped and everything. And so it meant to, because it's that horizontal surface where water can really stand, is to really try and protect them.
Right.
But the reality is that skin that wraps the building is probably a good 6 months to build it complete.
Okay,
All the metal framing, the windows, glazing, that and metal panels. So
okay,
parts will be waterproofed a little bit sooner. They'll get up and get the roof membrane, but even up on the roof, we have a complete sacrificial waterproof system up there that the roofing then sits on top of. And
Mhm.
it's to minimize water intrusion.
Yeah, it's gotta be a huge
Yeah.
problem, or not problem, but I mean, a huge
Yeah,
process.
because with natural wood, you're also looking at, well, what happens when it gets wet, and is it gonna dry out? Is it gonna stain? And can we clean those stains off?
Right.
And they do. Redmond got wet, they were able to try and get the water off of it if it gets on it. It's hard to dry, of course, the beams and columns, but they do dry out. And I think if you see them now, you wouldn't see water staining or damage from that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's such beautiful wood.
Yeah,
Protected.
Exactly. No, and I think Kirby's really cognizant of that and think about that, of how are they executing their work to maintain that, the beautiful wood look.
Mhm. Thank you.
Any other questions for Greg here? Good.
Not, I do have the one amendment, and this is for some furniture on Sisters and Lapine, and so, we had. When I look back at when was the last time we came to the board on it, it was for the initial award, and there's some additional furniture pieces that DPO wants to acquire for those libraries, and so it was pushing us over that limit, even though it was a small dollar amount, it was still pushing that limit. And then I adjusted it for a small level of additional funds as they really work through to say, hey, which pieces are working and what might we want to change there. So that's what is being requested there, is to increase that signing authority up to the 300,000. And that fits within our current budget.
That was my question, is where, how does this fit in? Is it coming out of contingency or is it
It's actually
well
not,
within our
yeah.
budget? Okay.
So within the budget line items for our furniture, you know, have some extra dollars
Okay.
sitting there. So I didn't even have to go to contingency for this, so, it pushed past the authorization.
All righty. Any other questions for Greg? I can't believe that walls are going up on Central already. It's exciting. All right, do we have a motion on Sisters of Pine Furniture to increase signing authority?
Yeah, I'll move to provide the library director signing authority up to $300,000 for the Sisters in Lapine Library's adjusted furniture contracts.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Greg.
You are welcome, and that
You
is,
have really gotten your presentations down to,
I know, it's like,
well, you guys also see and understand it too.
Yeah.
It's both ways.
Together so smoothly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they stripped the forms off of some of the first walls at Stevens Ranch, so you now see concrete in the
Okay.
air.
oh,
wow.
So if you drive by,
people are really excited. I've had more people comment because, I mean, that detour takes you directly by and people are, did you see what's
Great
going
advertising for us.
Great. All right, we're down to monitoring report and the emergency library director succession. Is Todd, are you presenting
Yes.
any, or Lynn, or?
I will be, just want to highlight, this is, well, one, it's a pretty basic report. It's basically, I will not fail to prepare at least 2 managers who are proficient at the director level in financial management, human resources, and board governance. This is probably the easiest year of doing this report because we now have 2 assistant directors. Chantal Strobel had been the manager who was picked to be trained for that in the past. And one, you have direct observation, you see them in all of our work sessions. They help me with the creation of the budget. We have actually a weekly meeting with our HR director just to go over any HR issues. And to really prove the point, you don't see Chantal here today because I signed up to speak to Ben 101. And then we moved the meetings to the evening and I couldn't do it. So she's taking my place right now. So that's happening. And then the other piece is you also, you probably don't have a direct look at, but when I'm taking vacations, Lynn can attest that that's usually when disasters happen.
right.
In the past, while I've been on vacation, a car has gone into the Lapine building.
COVID happened and changed.
Yes, yes. So one, Lynn doesn't ever want me to go on vacation. But I can definitely say we have 2 very well-qualified people that can step in at any moment. So I believe we are in compliance with this policy.
Here, here. That's, I think you have chosen quite well, Todd. Okay, any discussion on that? Any questions? Do I have a motion on emergency library director succession?
I can move. I move that the Deschutes Public Library District is in compliance with policy 3-J, emergency library director succession.
A second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Who seconded?
I did.
Okay. I do want to say one last thing just for Aaron, just a reminder that part of the governance policy is that kind of the board is monitoring my performance throughout the year through individual reports. So this kind of stacks us up along the way.
Good. All right, we're down to East Bend Library lease renewal, and Lynn, I think you're up for that.
Yeah, we have Lynn and Robert here.
Oh, and Robert.
Yeah,
Do you all need a break or anything? It's been an hour and we're all sitting. Anybody? No? Okay. Can you pop in here?
oh, yeah.
Do you need a?
I'm good.
No.
Okay,
Let me know if you need me to do anything to help you share.
Is it this one?
continue on.
That's it.
Just share.
All right. Hi, everyone. We're here to talk a little bit about East Bend. The lease is coming up. A little bit different than excitement, I think. We are very excited about our new buildings. And this is one where we knew that we had to figure out what was going to be happening with this location. So we're going to talk about a little bit about it today. Let me get through this. I'm going to throw a lot of dates at you. I'm going to throw some considerations at you. And then when we're done, we'll have a discussion about it. Okay? So bear with me as we go through this.
I will just say, I'm sure you're gonna get to it, but, the reason we're bringing it to you today is, the lease does end December 31st, 2025. And the owners have asked if we want to ask for a extension. They want to know that 18 months before that, and we're right about that point. So we're kind of at a decision point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you'll bear with me, I want to just take a few minutes to do a little background on why we've been talking about this. And it really came out of our DPL vision, mission, and growth. And just as a reminder, our vision is for people to learn, thrive, and connect to one another in the world. And in order to do some of that, we've created a strategic plan based on board results policies. And a lot of that with our strategic plan, at least for the last 22 to 24, have been about these buildings and our capital projects. The other thing that comes along with that then is also to look at how we are organized as a district. And then what does our staffing look like with all of these new buildings and this added square footage? Next slide, please. So when we're looking at East Bend, these are the kind of the three considerations that I'm going to talk a little bit about today. The building projects, they are the big ones. And what's really coming up, it sounds far away, but it's not. It's the opening and closing dates for Central and then Downtown Bend. The second consideration for this discussion with East Bend is to look at the overall staffing, the Deschutes Public Library, our existing staff, the type of staff that we have, and then what new staff are we going to need to hire. And I'm going to focus in on one certain part of that as we move forward. And then lastly, as Todd mentioned, the East Bend Library, the lease options are the third consideration. We do have considerations to think about for our East Bend space and its future. So,
Did I go?
no. You broke it.
Okay.
Okay, so this lovely building, our Central at Stevens Ranch. So these are the important project dates that are coming up in the next couple of years. The first one that's gonna come very quickly, well, two actually, is Central at Stevens Ranch is gonna open, it's slated to open February of 2026. And that's less than 2 years from now. Downtown Bend will be closing shortly on the heels of that opening or simultaneously, still have to work some of that out, but that will close that same month. And then downtown opens, ironically, a year after Central in this newly remodeled state, which we saw today. It's great. And it'll open in February of 27. So these are the dates we're looking at. Staffing. a little bit about staffing. I'm gonna focus on our library operations staffing specifically today, because this is really the consideration that we're looking at East Bend. Our library operations staffing, and again, just as a reminder, we're talking about our, oh, thank you, Todd, our public service specialists. Those are the people that I say all the time, they are the ones that turn the lights on and open the doors. They're the people that you see in our buildings most of the time. We will be hiring some new positions. Those are not yet hired. We will be working towards those this fiscal year. We will be hiring a lead for public service specialists, will be assistant for supervisors. We will be hiring makerspace technicians for these beautiful new creative spaces that we have in Redmond and Central and Downtown Bend. We will continue to have supervisors. I wanted to put them in there as part of our library operations staffing. And then we also do rely a little bit on our volunteers. And I imagine with these new buildings, we usually have an uptick in volunteers. So we will have more volunteer services. I really want to focus in though on our public service specialists. The reason for that is, again, they are the people that you see most of the time. They open our buildings, they take care of our buildings. They are also the biggest staff in East Bend. East Bend has public service specialists. They're not going to have a lead. They're not going to have a makerspace area. So I really wanted to do a comparison, apples to apples. So I'm going to focus the rest of this presentation only on our public service specialists. It's not that everybody else is not important. Community librarians are definitely important. Our supervisors are important. All of our facility staff, our administrative staff. But for this exercise and for discussion, we're really looking at our public service specialists. And what they do here, these are our point of need people. They help our customers at any time, anywhere. They do a lot of the check-in activities. They take care of all the holds, make sure they're pulled off shelves and placed. They do their own project work and they do committee work in the district. They have their email, their training, and then there's just the daily life library business activities that happen. I'm going to jump just ahead a little bit in Central. So there are central activities that happen in the district. Currently, they're happening mainly at the Downtown Bend branch. Library, sorry, I used the bad word, this branch. So what happens at Downtown Bend? It is the hub and the main area for the library district. So the district shipping and receiving center, the interlibrary loan happen there, homebound delivery, our courier coordination. And what's going to change with that is those activities will be moving to Central, along with this wonderful centralized automated handling system. It will become the distribution center. Our tech services department will be moving there as well. So all of our new materials will be heading to tech services. It will also be, the staff there will also be the main contact for all of our online emails, web services, phone services, any meeting room assistance that has to happen will be happening in our Central location. So we'll be moving from Bend to Central. Okay, hang on right there. Thank you. So looking at staffing, again, I just want to remind, these are public service specialists. This is not the entire staff. So at Downtown Bend right now, we have 17.6 FTE or 22 people. Most are full-time, some are 0.8 FTE. At East Bend right now, we have 6 FTE, or we have 7 people that work there. When I say we, it's Myra and I, who's sitting back there, have looked long and hard at operations, what happens at Downtown Bend, what we can foresee in our crystal ball, what we might need for Central. And the estimate is 19.4 FTE or 22 people. I know that seems like, wow, really? That's it? And you have that much at Downtown Bend. But again, a reminder, those main activities are going to be going to Central. The Redmond Library and the Downtown Bend Library are the same size and will have the same amount of staff. So looking at staffing, what we have to work with, right now, if you put Downtown Bend and East Bend together, we have 23.6 FTE or 29 people.
One thing I'd like to mention on this slide is, even though Central shows an open date of February 26, you want to think about the amount of time ahead of that where having staff in place so that we can get them trained up in the space and ready to open in February
Right.
is part of this calculation too.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about East Bend Library just for a little bit here. So reminder, it opened in 2011. It quickly became very popular because you could pick up your materials, your holds, you can get in, you can get out. Everything was good. The parking was fabulous. It's a little bit busier now, so parking's not as fabulous, but it's still working. Programs there have been popular. It is been well attended in our adult, family, and our children's story times. The meeting room usage for our public has been good as well. This has always been one of those places where the East Bend branch has excelled. And the ease of access, we hear it frequently from customers. I love coming in here because I don't like going downtown. The parking is terrible, or I just don't want to deal with the traffic, if there's traffic in Bend. The other thing that though is a reality for East Bend, this is a lease building. And we are reliant on the building owner. And because of that, we have limited capital improvements. We also have to make decisions, maybe before we would really like to. The other reality is it is near central at Stevens Ranch. It is, I think they don't have our address in Google Maps yet. But I did look at it at Sun Country and it's exactly 2 miles from East Bend to the new location. And the other thing that's happening, and we can't ignore it, is the impact of a major retailer that's moving, and that's, as you all know, is Costco. That's a frequent stop. It's along the shoreline, if you will, of, I'm gonna go to Costco, I'm gonna stop, pick up my books, but I'm gonna go on. So this is an impact. All right, now let's talk about some leases and some other impacts on this. So the lease options, and Todd mentioned this right at the beginning, this is per our property manager and the owner. So what our options are, what we're really looking at is to not renew the lease. That means it would close in December of 25. We could renew for a 2-year lease renewal, or we could do a 5-year lease renewal. We could do that. I want to look at each of these options here. So the first option for East Bend, we did no lease renewal. The library would close on December 31st, 2025. The impact of that is that we would have experienced trained staff from East Bend and downtown Bend at Central's opening. And to Robert's point, we would start them before the buildings open so they could get familiar with that 3-story building with all the new bells and whistles that it does have. It would also provide some staffing flexibility that would be based on our demand. Again, Myra and I did our best crystal ball and came up with a 19.4 FTE. When we did the math between Bend and East Bend, we would get 23.6. What we'll probably experience is a huge influx of people. If we have more demand, then we do have that staffing buffer or that flexibility to make those changes. It also would save 6 months of operating costs at East Bend. And then during that transition, the public would be without East Side services during this transition. But all of our branches have gone without services when we transition. Some have been more than others. Redmond will experience it next. We try and make it as short as possible, and we would do that also for this as well. The next option would be a 5-year lease. This would close the library in December of 2030. We would have to hire new staff for Central and downtown Bend because we would not get the East Bend staff. We would have to hire new staff at 12.8 FTE, 3 for Central, and then 9.8 for downtown Bend when that building opens up after the remodel. We would have to continue to maintain the operating costs for the existing staff at East Bend. And it could also show that we have some service limitations for an extended time. The impacts of this, of operating with this much staff, maybe we don't have hours, the same hours that we had at East Bend, or we don't have, we are cutting back on hours elsewhere. It has limitations with our programming. We only have so many programming staff. If we're at the max of staffing, we're gonna have a staff that's spread really thin, and they like to do everything for everybody, always.
Just to highlight, we put 5 years because that's the maximum that the owner has given us, for extensions. So we
Yeah.
can't really predict beyond 5 years.
So the next option, I'm calling it 3A, so you know there's gonna be a 3B, so thank you for bearing with me. This would be the 2-year lease option. So East Bend Library would close at the end of 27. Again, we would still have that need to hire new staff for Central and Downtown Bend, so we'd still need to hire 12.8 for the opening of Central and then the reopening of Downtown Bend in February of 27. So the added cost to this, including maintaining the East Bend staff, you see the number there on the screen. And again, it's basically kind of the same like the 5, it's a lot less money for a 2-year, but we would still have some service limitations for time. And then it would keep 2 libraries within 2 miles of each other for about 2 years.
And just to clarify, the dollar costs that you're seeing here are costs spread across that whole period. So that first one was around $2 million across 5 years. This would be about 1.2 million, 1.3 million on that too.
Thank you for that. And I also want to reiterate too, that number is just public services specialist and a lease. It does not include the sudden need for, oh, maybe we need another community librarian to do story time. It does not include, oh, we have so many programs now, we have to hire another programmers. This is just strictly public service specialist staff, so that we're comparing apples to apples as we're moving forward. And then the 3B option would be that we would close the East Bend Library at the end of 26. The impact on this is we're still hiring new staff for Central. It would be a little bit less. For Downtown Bend, it would be a little bit less. So for Central, we would still hire for the three FTE. Downtown Bend, we could move the East Bend staff to the East Bend, to Downtown Bend to get ready to reopen it. But it wouldn't be the 9.8. We would only need to hire 3.8, because if you recall the way back staff in East Bend, there were 6 FTE. So those 6 FTE from East Bend would go to Downtown Bend, and we would still have to hire 3.8 to make what we need for Downtown Bend. So we're still hiring new staff, it's just a little bit less. That's why the number's a little bit lower. We would close East Bend. The other thing that this does is we would close East Bend, but we'd continue to pay the lease because we would be under probably an obligation to do that. And again, there would still be some overall service limitations for time, but it would be less than the 2 years. It would probably just be for another 10 months.
I know we've said it, but I just want to emphasize it. The 2-year lease comes about because, about a year ago, we talked with the board about what you would like to see, and we talked about keeping the lease until Downtown Bend opens.
Right.
And we did, so since then, we have checked with the owner. They do not want to grant us that short of a lease. So 2 years is the shortest extension they will allow.
That's right.
So that's why it's not an arbitrary number on our side, it's.
Right. Okay. So just a quick review. These are our options kind of out there. And I just for fun, I said, we could do a 2035 if you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that would be the option that basically is continue as we are now, right? Because
Yes.
we've done 2 5-year extensions. And
Yeah.
as we get close to each one of them, then the board decides, okay, can we extend further?
Okay, I'm pretty much, that's kind of it for the considerations and those are the thoughts that are consistently and constantly going through my mind.
I think the biggest theme that I take from this is just, like all these options are possible. What we're kind of looking at is our financial risk and our flexibility in being able to adjust and serve as we move forward.
Yeah.
What questions do you have for us?
I have a question. Are we having a temporary library for Downtown Bend during that remodel? We've done that at our other sites. Will we be doing that
Yeah.
downtown then?
Yeah, we've talked about that, and a couple of things we're looking at is, one, we have the central library. And then a really big piece is, we want people to experience that library.
Right.
So it kind of, it's a benefit for us to funnel them over there. And also it's, the same challenges exist for us as far as stretching our staffing with a temporary facility.
What did I see on the 3B? It does give the public a little bit of time to get used to having central and without cutting them off. As soon as central opens, we close East Bend. Is there any thoughts, I should say, about helping them, I suppose, the public, get used to the idea of going to Central instead of East Bend?
I would say, well, we do have, about a year and a half right now to start preparing them. So that, but what you're saying is definitely a thought. I mean, that's why it's one of the options.
So the main the cost difference is about $400,000
Per
between,
year, yeah.
and staffing wise, if we went with 3A instead of 3B, would we have excess staff? Or that would just be, they would just be absorbed in at the end of that?
Hang on a second, let me check my notes. I think that you are correct, Anne. I thought you were gonna say different option. So yes, what would happen then is, we would have Central fully staffed and we would have Downtown Bend fully staffed. So now we have staff at East Bend that we may or may not, I don't wanna say need, but it's possible we may not. You're right, we would have excess staff.
And how many people would that be?
And are we talking about 3A? Because you,
Mhm.
3A and said 3B. Okay.
No, 3A, I
Okay,
was
yeah.
comparing 3A and
No,
3B.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, thank you.
And yeah, you are correct. We would have staff that we would have to relocate or figure out what
I think we're
What we
talking
would need to
about
do.
7 people.
these 7 staff. Yeah.
And then go back to B where is it option 2, where we close down just as Central opens?
The first option.
Yeah.
This one.
Okay. And essentially, we'd be closing East Bend a little before, hoping that Central does open in February 2026. If there's delays, then it'll be a little longer. But there'll
Yeah.
be a gap in between.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
And
the
so-
other thing I'd mention about this option is, this is the option that was in that financial forecast that I provided you about 3 months ago. Because we did not yet have a board decision about extending the lease or not.
Which one, 3B?
No, option 1. So because we didn't have a board decision to extend the lease past December 31st,
Oh, okay.
2025, that model I presented to you is this one.
Okay,
So all of these costs would keep that curve a little bit lower over time,
okay.
depending on how far out we go.
Thank you, yeah, that was,
So the main difference is that 3A would allow us to keep East Bend open through the renovations at downtown. So we would have 2 East Side branches. And 3B, we would have Central, and that would be it for the whole town.
No, I think you're mixing them up a little bit. Yeah.
Right.
So 3A assumes that Central would be open, and I'm gonna throw some dates out there. Central opens in February of 26,
Six, right?
and then Downtown Bend opens in February of 27. So we would have all of our libraries
Okay,
open,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No,
You
that's
have,
fine.
you have
Yeah.
three libraries for about 10 months, basically.
Okay,
Yeah,
I got
so,
you.
and 3 libraries within 5 miles.
Yeah.
Right, okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's
That's-
fine, yeah.
Okay, I'm glad I
Yeah.
said that. So
Yeah,
that
I
got-
think the one that you're talking about might have been the first option where we close it in 25.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
so this one, we would have 3B, we would have overlap for,
About
10
10 months, yes. And then
With-
3.
So 3B would keep East Bend open through the Downtown Bend renovation
And through its opening, yeah.
and through its
yeah,
opening.
And
okay.
then it
But-
would be open, and then we would still have to operate East Bend for another 10 months.
No,
No.
no,
No.
3B,
3B,
Confusing yourself.
East Bend Library closes December 31st, 2026.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Downtown
I went
Bend
to
opens
27,
in
sorry.
February of
As soon
27.
as- Basically,
Yeah.
as soon as downtown Bend's ready, we shift the East Bend staff over to downtown Bend.
Yeah,
So from a staffing standpoint, I guess the best way to think about it is we have one option that closes East Bend and can relocate that staff, absorb that staff into Central, right before Central opens. We have one option that closes East Bend when Downtown Bend reopens, and we're able to bring staff into that. At a additional cost, but that's the option.
that's.
And then there's this other option where we could extend East Bend operations past the opening of both of those locations and maintain three libraries in Bend for a period of time. Could be for 10 months, it could be for 5 years, right?
That last one, beyond financials, the concern to me is just, what do I do with? I don't wanna have staff that are in jeopardy, that if we
Right.
close it, we don't know where to put them.
right, and I mean, that's
That's
the
the
concern I have is to not leave staff in the lurch. And then the other thing that we discussed when we originally discussed this is, because I mean, East Bend has been a heavily used branch, but we are gonna have another library 2 miles away. And if we were going to have a smaller branch, is that, all things being equal, is that where we would place it? And I know people have a lot of, attachment to that branch because it has served that area of town really well. But there are other areas of town also that have no
Yeah.
service.
South and north.
So I think what we originally talked about was letting data drive the decision, but then there's also the complicating factor of what do you do with the staff?
Yeah, and. You know, and we could pull more data and circulation data. I'm not sure how much it will be helpful. Because East Bend, again, COVID was a huge interruption for a lot of our data.
Right.
And when you compare prior to when we finally actually got started again as a library in 2022, East Bend hasn't caught up.
Oh.
Yeah.
And you're pointing out about Costco closing, I think that will have an impact as well.
Right, but we're
But
gonna feel that right away,
yeah,
because I think they're slated to be open in August.
Yeah.
We're gonna
we're
notice what
gonna
that, yeah.
notice what that does on that. I mean, there's still huge demand on that side of town and I think,
Mhm.
I don't know.
Mhm.
Do you have recommendations?
Well, one, as you can see,
Mhm.
this is not an easy.
Right, I mean,
one,
this is-
why we're kind
yeah.
of bringing it to you this way. I would say the one that I'm most comfortable with is thinking long-term financials is we would be best off financially with the first option.
Oh, I
That
have,
one, yeah.
I have,
Yes.
yeah.
Because that would be a positive for us in the fact that, it'd be a seamless movement of staff into a facility, I really like the piece that Lynn talked about is these are seasoned staff that are prepared to help in a building that's gonna be pretty complicated. And again, that downward curve, which we are planning on, and Robert talked about, if we do the other options, it's going to be steeper. And then we will be looking sooner than later at how do we continue funding going forward. And so that may push that up for the board. And, instead of 5 to 10 years from now, it may bring it up, or instead of 10 years from now, it may bring it up to 5 years.
And I would just add too, I think one of the things that, we've experienced firsthand, especially Myra, myself and Robert, when we're opening these new buildings, even with Sisters in Lapine, and now we're feeling it with the Redmond staff. There's a lot of change involved, and it's stressful for staff. And having staff that already know the library, know the policies, know the procedures, so that they can focus on the new places, their new spaces, so they can acclimate and make that space their own, because it's really important. And I kind of go blithely along most of the time, and I have to have people stop me and say, okay, there's some angst here, Lynn.
Right.
And I thank everybody who tells me those things, because I'm beginning to recognize it. And I think this one, it's not a data-driven, it's more human-driven, that I think having the seasoned staff, having more than we maybe need at the beginning is gonna be really helpful. And then when we look at reopening Bend, downtown Bend in 27, we will have had a year of Central under our belt, and we'll know if we overstaffed or understaffed. And we can make that transition because we're all there.
And so I'm confused, Lynn. Are you saying, as Todd suggested, we go with option 1 would probably be the best in your aspect there, your opinion?
I think so, yes, the option 1, based on budgetary operations and just the change management for staff.
Okay. And also, if we do move out of East Bend, it seems like a lot of East Bend is picking up and dropping off. What's the status of some of the kiosk type things that could replace that?
Sure, and that's something that we can look at, hopefully after a lot of these capital projects are done. Or at least we have most of them under our belt and Central's open. But those are always an option, and those can be in the north side of town, they can be in the south side of town, they can be in those places. I hope that when Central gets going, the excitement of it, I've heard the community, their excitement with Redmond, and it's pretty amazing, and I can't wait for Central to start popping up.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think it's good to remember is with Central, just 2 miles away, the same kinds of folks who are going to be out running errands and driving and then park, run in, do pickups and drop offs are now going to have a drive up book return at Central to be able to just pull up and drop off. And so I think it's really going to help facilitate the kinds of customers who see East Bend as that, put it in my errands for all the other stuff I'm doing.
Good point, yeah.
So have we looked at, I know this is out in the future, the cost of kiosk staff to maintain that. So we have money going into East Bend right now. Can that money then be looked at as replacing East Bend with kiosks?
Like adding it to a reserve.
Right, so
The
that,
answer is no,
okay,
because we didn't specify in the bond.
okay,
But we do have money in our reserve,
Right.
and we could afford to buy the key. The only reason we haven't purchased the kiosk is staff capacity at this point.
Yeah,
right.
And we really wanted to be most effective when we had a centralized processing.
Right.
That's gonna make it super.
Yeah.
Yeah,
efficient.
and I would like to
Yes.
get like a
Yes.
plan,
Mhm.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Yeah.
for the entire county to
Right.
be able to say,
Mhm.
we've looked at, and I mean, kind of what we had talked about was letting the dust settle
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
these new facilities and see what usage is.
Mhm.
And then put together a really good plan for satellite
Yeah.
locations, because I think that's, I mean, that's what all of this project is about, is driving services out into neighborhoods.
Yes.
And the great news is that we're starting from a good foundation. I mean, Lynn already put together that initial study that went into the budget proposal in, I wanna say 2020. For the kiosk as a pilot program.
Mhm.
So that was based off of a different distribution model, so we would obviously be refreshing it, but we're not starting from scratch on that
Right.
analysis.
And all of that technology has continued to evolve and people have
Oh.
more experience with it,
Yes.
so I'm sure that.
No, I think this will be good, and again with Central and the automated handling system, I mean, I think it's gonna be a 17 or 19 bin system as the major distribution center and working with our courier, and I mean, it's Myra says I get too excited about AMH, but.
Yes, I get excited too.
Okay, you
Yeah.
wanna chime in?
Yeah, I think what we've been looking at is ways to make our courier system much more efficient.
Right,
And that AMH will allow us to take our current model of a little bit messy, but out of need, and we don't have that technology there. What it will do is replicate almost a shipping center.
mhm,
And so items come in, we can have a quick sort where the machine does it for us, so now staff don't have to physically do that manual labor for us. And then things can go out quickly, and so the nice part of that is we can instantly code or assign something to these items, go to our kiosks. Then all we have to do is deliver. The other part to that is we have been accounting for centralized services. And so that is a task that we're already kind of getting an eyesight on that will help manage that.
mhm.
We just can't get there fast enough.
That's not enough hours for the day.
Yeah.
The really good news is we have planned for it, we have money in our budget to buy these kiosks.
Mhm.
And then really, we're kind of waiting for the systems to be ready to make it most efficient.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have a feeling for this loose data on the program attendance and physical book distribution for that time period of December through February? I'm imagining winter time is when
Yeah,
more books are checked out, more programs are attended because we're not out as
you would
much.
think so. December is historically is one of our lowest circulating months. People are out shopping, they're doing holiday, except in downtown Bend where everybody will see the train man. But the good news is the train man can go to Central. Did I say that? I said that.
Yes,
You committed.
So, and then January, February, they also are not our biggest
Okay.
or highest circulating months.
Okay.
In reality, I don't know, January, I think it would be more, but I think kids are starting to get back in the swing of school. People are still taking vacations, and February's always been a little bit low too. There's still quite a few holidays and things that are happening around then.
Yeah.
So if we were going to be in a transition period where we had to be silent for a while or go dark, it's the best time
It's
to
actually
do
the
it.
best time, okay.
Yeah. Would you agree?
I would completely agree, yeah.
So do we need any kind of a motion on this, or
So
do
we
we just
looked,
agree on whichever option?
we looked into the historicals on this from the last times that the board has taken this question up about whether to extend the lease for the 5-year periods. And really, all we need is this kind of general direction from the board, some level of consensus. And then we'll come back for a board decision. If the decision is to look at a lease renewal, we'll come back with the lease for consideration, and then you can look over the terms and ask us questions then and have a board motion.
So do we want to take a consensus on which option then, from each board member? Let's start with Ann Malkin.
She sprayed me, so.
Really? Man, I guess based on the recommendation from staff, that I would go with one. And my major reason for feeling that way is I really do not want to leave staff hanging with no jobs. I mean, I think we really have a duty to take care of our employees. And that situation just appears to be untenable. We also have to look out for the long-term financial interests of the district. And I think combined with the urgency or the impetus that we want to push services in alternative delivery systems out into neighborhoods once we have the automated material handling system in place. I mean, I think all of these things are happening all at the same time, and it's a hard decision to make, but I think that's the option that I would favor.
Okay, how about Inez?
This is a tough decision, because there are some viable options, but then when you look at those, there is that financial piece behind them. As a board, we received lots of comments from the community about how they value their branch or their community libraries, and I take that to heart, as you all know.
Right.
So if the board does decide to go with option one, where we have no lease renewal, I would like to see a very firm plan in place on how we are going to then bring the kiosk or more community-based services. So I would like to see something in the works, a very kind of, as much as we can do, as a formalized plan to have that happen. Because there is, our community feels very strongly about that connection to the libraries, and I think this is gonna be a big change. You know, we're downtown Bend closing, new library, East Bend closing, that's a lot going on for, this area of our system. So.
Good points. Erin?
I think it is unfortunate that the property management company is not interested in a short-term 6-month lease. I think that could cover a lot of bases if construction is delayed, if we just need a cushion. So it is unfortunate that that is not an option. But I think option one sounds like it could be the best fit moving forward.
And I agree. I think that financially and for the disruption of employees, option one does sound the best. I agree with Inez that a plan for kiosk or how to handle that would be a good thing. So, okay, we seem to have a consensus for option one, guys.
So Todd, since we wouldn't be coming back with a lease for board motion, I would recommend that we do a board motion and vote on option one on no, to allow the lease.
Because otherwise
Otherwise, we don't have a.
We'd have to
decision.
never have a decision.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, do I have a motion then for this, for East Bend?
I guess the motion would be to adopt option one.
One,
Which is
Allow
not
lease to terminate December 31st, 2025.
Yeah.
do I have a motion?
Also.
Okay.
I will second.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second.
Aaron seconded.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thanks, guys. I know that was a tough decision, and I think we all, plus the staff, gave it considerable amount of thought, and I appreciate that.
I'll just add that because in our minds, we have always had the kiosks as the next step.
Right.
I think very good board direction to just lay that out for people, that is what we'll be looking at. I mean, it'll be good, we can start talking in the community about areas of the community that are interested in having a service like that.
Yeah, and I think, I really, although that's been what we've discussed as probably a good alternative, I don't want to limit us to that. I mean, whether, card activated locker areas within commercial space and things like that, that other libraries have tried, are all super pickups and drop-offs. Yeah, I think that the field is open for staff to bring forward the best ideas for serving the public.
Oh, yeah.
I think we could get real creative.
Yeah.
Right.
I was in Hillsborough, and they have a new community center there, and there is a area that, you know, it's kind of like the Flyberry in a
Yes.
way, but there are people, there are books there, and they're able to check it out and bring them back. So I think there's a lot of room for creativity
Yes.
in
Right.
different areas of our
Right.
our service
Depending
area.
on, I think it's, I've been excited about this for a long time, because I think people will have those services close to them in a way that they can access them at their convenience, and we can also reduce staffing around that, so.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I can't wait for like 4 or 5 years from now. No, we just gotta get central in place.
Yeah.
And then get used to it, and then it will be off to the race car. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
moving
you.
along to the next one. This one is an interesting one. Robert, come forward.
Yes, so
Why?
this one should hopefully be a less agonizing decision. I'll preface this because Betsy Tucker is not here today. This did kind of spring up from some discussions that she and I had during one of the check signing weeks that she had. And with her experience in finance departments and a few of the public agencies in Central Oregon, she did comment that the level of internal control that we have here at the library is higher than what she's seen in other districts. So I started investigating, looking into the history of kind of how did we get to the state of the internal control that we have right now, which is, as you all know, weekly review of checks with one representative board member, spot checks, and then a few other kind of checklist items to make sure that there's no gaps and that there's no unexplained large charges and expenditures and those kinds of things. And then the other part of it is at the end of that process on a weekly basis is that board member signature that in theory is the authorization to move forward with issuing those checks and ACHs. Okay, so let's back up and just take a brief look at what's the purpose of that particular internal control? And then also, like, was this always the way, or was there more to it? So to me, this internal control serves two main purposes. And internal controls in general for our financial systems help us to maintain a level of confidence that the inflows and outflows of money and commitments that the district makes on your behalf as board members are all appropriate. They're all towards the business and conduct of business of the district for the taxpayers. So this particular internal control provides you as board members with the ability to oversee that process fairly closely, and then to give some level of transparency because the entire check register is kind of laid bare for you. That said, there are ways for us to achieve those two goals and make the control itself a little less burdensome on the board members and also a little bit more of a smoothing of the process. Now, what do I mean by this, a smoothing of the process? Well, in general, a portion of the checks every week represent commitments that the district has already made. So in terms of that formality, or in terms of that theoretical authorization, it does become something of a formality in the sense that we've already committed to paying rent on East Bend, paying our utility bills, things of that nature, paying our payroll, right? On a monthly basis, one of you reviews the payroll and says, yep, that looks appropriate. But in terms of like a decision whether to authorize payment of that payroll, there are some pretty significant risks that you would incur on behalf of the district if you said, no, we're gonna halt payroll, or no, we're gonna halt rent, right? And so that additional financial risk, whether you feel it or not, does create some kind of implicit pressure that undermines the authorization, at least, of the release of expenditure. And so it becomes something of a formality in that sense. So the proposal in the memo is to move to a monthly process where instead of having a representative board member make a decision like that about that could incur potential financial risk on their own as representative of the whole board, it would be included in the board packet as part of the review material for discussion and then adoption, similar to what you do for the monthly minutes, where you have a chance to review it ahead of time. We can still provide the checklist so that like you have that, like, I know what my last check number was, so I can make sure that this full monthly list, there's no gaps, there's no questions. It also allows for a certain amount of, it avoids a certain amount of duplication because each of you in your own week may identify a very similar kind of question about like, hey, who's that vendor that we see there? Or what's that amount that we're seeing there? And it helps us to be able to like address that all as a group. Oh, and answer the question once. The other thing is that it would come up kind of concurrent with your review of the building project report that you get from Greg, which is a big chunk of the large expenditures that you're seeing that you would have a lot of questions about. So to me, there are a lot of benefits from doing this because it allows for that kind of group discussion and addressing that in public forums. So in some sense, it increases the transparency. It's not just transparency to our board members now. It would be transparency to the public. They would actually be present for that review through the recordings or through attendance of the meeting. It would also allow the board to maintain oversight. It would be after those checks are issued, but it would still be within the bounds of that monthly review. And if there were anything that the board questioned about that expenditure, that would be something that I would take as an action out of the meeting to investigate, provide it, like any other question that the board raises in the board meeting. It would be an item for discussion to take up in old business for the following meeting or through an email to the board members, depending on the level of detail. So that's kind of the background of it. And at this point, I'm going to pause for questions or concerns that you might have with that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you said it, but my brain went away. We also ran this by our accountants and they recommended this.
Yeah.
Right, I was sure.
Okay.
I would also mention, because I didn't yet, is that the internal process that we go through where the accounts payable technician is the one who's developing that. That's Brett Boothroyd. Excuse me, I am providing a regular review. I would still be doing a weekly review because we would still do a weekly cycle of check release.
Mhm.
So I would be the quality control check, not the oversight check, which is what I do now. And then I would review with Todd as we do in prep for your weeklies. It's just I would do that with Todd in prep for this board meeting, basically.
Right.
So just to verify that there would be no impact in the timelines of when checks go out for payroll.
That's correct.
Or insurance or any of those things, even though it's a month or
Yeah,
7 weeks.
we would maintain a weekly schedule of check release.
Okay.
And so that would be the biggest change to you as board members would be your comfort level with releasing that notion of authorization. Because as I said to you before, like, in essence, that authorization was, at the very least, carried enough risk that I don't think, help me out here, because I've only been here 3 years, I don't think there's been a situation where a board member has said, stop the checks, don't send them out.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So like, what, in practice, was it ever truly authorization? It was oversight, which was the appropriate
Right,
control.
and I think that was the goal.
And I guess that's kind of where it started, was there was actually a much more stringent process put in place by the board as it was constituted years ago, because they did want that greater sense of they were in the decision and authorizing when, yep, we can send out the payment.
And that's really started when we started, board members actually signed each individual check.
Exactly.
And so to move from that towards this process, we needed to kind of gradually. So, yeah.
So I did include a suggested motion, but feel free to use whatever verbiage you would like as well.
I'll do it. I move to change review of district warrants from weekly review by a single board member to monthly review by the entire board.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Great idea. I look
Thank
forward.
you all. So we will put this into effect starting July. We'll still have 2 more of the weekly reviews, just because we didn't want to anticipate a board motion and decision on this one.
Thanks. Thanks,
Actually,
Robert.
this motion,
Thank you.
we could probably cancel those reviews.
If you and the board agree on that, we could cancel those reviews starting with next week.
And that way we.
And
can
then
have a
we can
test run.
include the basically, we'll run the full report for June for review, even though the first 2 weeks have been reviewed. But we'll give you the June checks and ACH and payroll information starting in the July board meeting.
Okay.
Excellent. All right.
Sounds good to me. Great. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
All right, we're down to library news. Todd.
Well, we're deep into summer with the library. Had a very exciting kickoff. I think I sent you out the thing of everything we did that one Saturday. But fun to see that happening. Again, it's for all ages, so if you haven't signed up, you can start doing that. I did want to highlight what's coming. I just kind of, my apologies, realized I know what's coming, and a lot of times you might be surprised at what's coming. So next month, at our board meeting, we have the artist John Grade is going to be coming and sharing with us the art that he has planned for the Central Library. So that'll be, we've seen some samples already, so it's going to be exciting. We'll probably have a shelving bid for the Central Library coming, and Robert's going to be debriefing you on what happened with the water damage here at the Sisters Library. Probably, spoiler alert, we recovered from it.
Yeah. It's my whole presentation.
And then we have our annual community involvement report, which based on board feedback, I'm shifting a little bit. I will have the written report.
I'm so sorry.
We have a number, about 2 or 3 of our partners coming to kind of talk about what the impact is with that. So that's what's coming up next month. It will be at the admin building, and the August meeting will be in Mohana. And then we are trying to schedule a board work session. A big piece that I'm really hoping to do with the board is to take a hard look at the results policies and look at revamping them for a couple of reasons. A big one is we need to start working on our strategic plan for the next 4 to 5 years. And really, that starts with what the direction the board sets. And we're kind of struggling with trying to interpret some of the policies, and I think it'll be a good exercise for us to take a look at that now that we have a new board and what that'll look like. So, the dates that we sent out earlier doesn't look like they're gonna work, so we'll probably start looking into September, for dates. But we'll take, I know we have information on some of your availability, so that we may shift that based on when we can get it all together. And that's the news from me.
Great. Thanks, Todd. Is there any foundation news? Betsy's not there and I don't think Chantal is there, so.
Well, actually, we had the wrap up for a novel idea, which was well attended and really a wonderful presentation by the author and nice reception. And yeah, it was very enthusiastically received, so.
And our first event ever at Caldera High, so we're getting ready because Bent High is gonna be shut down for remodels, so
Yeah.
trying out new space.
Yeah, it's a nice venue.
Mhm.
Oh, great. Okay. Any critical communication that might be left over here?
I think the biggest critical communication is going to be East Bend. I'll be working with our communications team to put out we'll talk about putting out a note on that. We're really not to that point yet, but we'll figure out how we're gonna message that. I will share that with you before we send it out to the public.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, self-review of the meeting.
And
Let's start-
if you don't mind, Betsy had a great question last time. What is self-review of the meeting? And for Aaron, I thought,
Yeah.
rather than just saying that and letting you guess at what we're doing,
Yes.
really, we set that up originally to kind of see how did we do in the meeting in regards to governance policy. And it has kind of morphed over time to what people liked or didn't like about the meeting, but really that was the intent of that. It might be something we want to look at when we have a work session to see are aspects of what we're doing in meetings still fitting what we're trying to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, thanks. I was gonna start with Aaron, but maybe we should, maybe we should start with Ann Ness. How's that?
You almost got
You jinxed yourself there.
I know, exactly.
Well, Ann Malkin complained so much last time.
Okay, good meeting. All our decisions that we make as a board really come from the information we get from staff. And I think that's hugely important. I appreciate Robert and Lynn tonight giving us the options and really outlining what those mean. And so that was really very helpful to actually look at and compare where we could go. So that information was very helpful in us as a board, I think, coming to a consensus of how to move forward. So I appreciate that. It was great to see Ruth and Matt again. I always appreciate their enthusiasm and their excitement about what they're doing. So it's great to see them back.
Thanks. And Malkin.
I would agree that was one of the harder decisions that we've had to make as a board, but I really feel like that's part and parcel of our job as board members, is to look out for the financial well-being of this district and how best to allocate dollars to make sure that we deliver the very best possible services to the people in Deschutes County. So yeah, it was a hard decision. But I think, excuse me, as we move forward, we've got to watch dollars carefully and plan not just for excuse me, today, but for years in the future as well. So I feel confident that the things we're putting in place will provide good services to the east side of Bend. I think they'll provide incredible services to the east side of Bend, as well as setting us up to provide better services throughout the county, in new ways that people don't expect, people don't have exposure to all the alternative delivery systems that we've had a chance to learn about. And I think that those are really going to help push materials and books out into the hands of people in convenient ways. And I think that once they experience that, I think that they will really like it. So. And I'm really excited about the building plans, and as I said, one of the most exciting parts of this whole process is the improvements that are going to be available in downtown Bend. I think people are really going to be excited to see the enhancements to that building and the services we can deliver there. So it was a great meeting. Thank you.
Okay, hey, Erin.
All right. I just love the opportunity to be here in Sisters. This is the first time I've been here since the remodel, and I'm it's such a beautiful space. Really excited we have that available now. I appreciated the perspective from Matt and Ruth on keeping the things that are important in the downtown branch and what to enhance. I'm excited to see implementation of design goals, increasing light, increasing that kind of natural feel, and minimizing the sound from the book drop. And that lease renewal, definitely a difficult decision. It would have been really nice to have a real short-term overlap, but unfortunately not an option. But I am really excited to see what kind of kiosks or alternative options we have for community access moving forward, and definitely a tough choice, but I'm excited to see what we can create out of that.
Thank you. I agree with all of you, certainly. It's a difficult decision, but I think that each one of us can say, as well as the staff, that we gave it considerable thought in that process. It was not easy, and it was not light-handed that we did that. And I do appreciate Ruth and Matt with your presentations, and I look forward to some more of those. Todd.
No, thank you. I really appreciate your patience as you got to share some of our struggles as we look at how we're moving forward in the future. Thank you, Greg. We had that moment today where we got to walk through the Sun River Library, and it's looking amazing. It's just out in Redmond on Tuesday. It's looking amazing. So thank you for getting us to this point and beyond. And as just to highlight Ruth and Matt and their work, they really listen throughout this entire project. And when they bring something and we don't like it, and we can explain why or how that doesn't fit, they really listen, come back and bring some really significant changes. Even what you just saw today has changed a lot over the last 2 months, just based on how they're listening. So it's a sign for all the projects we're doing, and really appreciate having that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to everybody, and I will adjourn this meeting.
All right. Bye, buddy.
All right. Bye, buddy.
Bye-bye.